What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Bluebird Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, according to Trainer of the Year, legendary trainer, Derrick James, trainer of two-time junior middleweight world champion, Jamel Lions Only Charlo, and trainer of undefeated, unified WBC, IBF, welterweight world champion, superstar boxer, Errol Spence Jr. Derrick James discussed what he sees in Errol Spence Jr., gives us an update on Errol Spence Jr. in training camp, and how Errol Spence Jr. is doing after suffering that horrific car accident October 10th, just 12 days after unifying the titles against two-time welterweight world champion Showtime Sean Porter September 28th to become the WBC IBF welterweight world champion. He says that Errol Spence Jr. today's time is more focused. He says he's more opened up. He says he believes that the situation allowed Errol Spence to see and be more vocal and be more loose. He's opened up. He's enjoying life, right? So he says that Errol Spence Jr. has not started sparring yet. He'll spar the Monday after Derrick James comes back from obviously being in the bubble with Jamel Charlo, as Jamel Charlo looks to unify in his division at the 154-pound junior middleweight division against Jason Rosario next Saturday in September 26th. I believe it's in Connecticut, New York. It's a pay-per-view event. So he says that, after that, Errol Spence Jr. will, for the first time, be back sparring. He says, but Errol Spence Jr. mentally is stronger than ever, he believes. He says, I know Errol Spence Jr. He says he was quiet before. It was hard to get him to say two words. We could sit at dinner and Errol Spence never say anything. He says, but now he's more vocal. He's more open. He's living life. He's relaxed. He says, and he's more dedicated. He believes, mentally. We know Errol Spence was dedicated to the sport physically, and Errol Spence said the last two fights in preparation for four-division world champion Mexican superstar boxer Mikey Garcia, and in preparation for two-time welterweight world champion Showtime Sean Porter, he says that he wasn't as focused and as disciplined as he should have been. This is the words of Errol Spence. He says, but now he's definitely more focused. He understands what he nearly lost. He understands, the bond he could have put his family in. He says that, he didn't have everything squared away. Should that car accident have resulted in loss of life, he says that, nobody was secure. So now I'm more focused. I understand what the sport of boxing, awards me to do and allows me to do. So Errol Spence is back with, reported to be back with his strength and conditioning coach, Blu-ray. As he said that he stopped using the strength and conditioning coach ahead of, the Mikey Garcia and Sean Porter fights. Now, it's very hard and very difficult to see if there was a difference between Errol Spence in the Mikey Garcia-Sean Porter fight than Errol Spence against Carlos Ocampo, Errol Spence versus Chris Algieri, or Errol Spence versus Kell Brook. It's very difficult to see the difference. Errol Spence says that he himself would have been able to stop those guys, if he was focused and more disciplined. But the fact that and was with his strength and conditioning coach, he said in the later rounds I would have been able to stop them. He says, but due to the fact that, I wasn't focused and disciplined as I should have been outside of the ring in the leading up into those two fights is the reason why I didn't stop Sean Porter or Mikey Garcia. Boxing, we know, is a sport that's 80 to 90% mental, 10%, 20% physical, however you choose, to put it, right? Everybody says it different. It could be 80% physical, 80% mental and 20% physical, or some people say it's 95% mental and 5% physical, so on and such, right? But we know the sport of boxing is definitely, you have to be mentally prepared. And he says, he was asked about, if he hasn't sparred since that accident, October 10th, how do you know physically he'll be ready? And Derrick James said that, he stated that because Errol Spence has been doing this for a very long time, he will be ready. He's been an IBF world champion for over 3 years. He knows. It's like riding a bike. right? He says, when I see him hitting the pads, when I see him in the gym, he said, initially when I looked at him, I just wanted to make sure. He said, I just couldn't stop looking at him because I just was counting my blessings that he was still here. He was still with us. He says, but as time went on, he sees no difference except for elevation mentally, right? So physically, he don't see a difference. So he don't believe that he lost anything or he gained anything. But mentally, he believes that he gained mentally an edge, right? And he says that he's motivated because all the doubters believe that he can't bounce back from that situation. He says all the doubters are motivating him because a lot of people feel like he shouldn't have went into a fight with Danny Garcia straight away, especially not having any sparring, right? He says so, but that's motivation because he's been a world champion for 3 years. He knows what he can and can't do. He understands his body. He's the one that went through it, right? He's the one that had to face the adversity. So he says that, a lot of people say that he should have took a tune-up fight before going in a fight with a 2-division world champion, former junior welterweight unified world champion, and former WBC welterweight world champion, and a heavy hitter and heavy puncher in both hands in Danny Garcia, who is a knockout artist. He says, but he understands that Errol Spence understands and knows his body and believes in himself, and he's out to prove all the doubters wrong. He says that he's motivated. He don't see no difference as far as him hitting the pads. He said, when I hit the pads initially, I was looking at Errol Spence and I'm saying, I'm just glad he's here. I'm just glad that I'm looking at him physically. But then he said eventually it came back to the point where he's just seeing how he react opposed to just admiring the fact that he's still with us or counting your blessings that he's still with us, right? And so he says that, yes, he'll be back in sparring the Monday after Jermell Charlo fights. So that Monday after Jermell Charlo, which would be the 27th, the 28th, Errol Spence will be back training as far as sparring. I know it was reported that September he will be back sparring, and that's right on date. That's right on time. That's right on schedule. Everybody's saying he wouldn't be back sparring until September. Well, that's right on time. But Derrick James is also, you have to take into account that Derrick James is also simultaneously running 2 training camps because their fights are September 26th, which is a mega fight for Jermell Charlo, unifying against Jason Rosario. So that's a big fight. Jermell Charlo is always ready, so he don't have to get ready. But you want to pay a lot of close attention to detail to make sure he's successful, which I expect Jermell Charlo to be successful against Jason Rosario. It's going to be a tough fight, but I think skills pay the bills, and I think that Jermell Charlo just has more skills than Jason Rosario. And I think the same goes for Errol Spence when you're talking about him in a fight in a showdown with Danny Garcia. This is no slight to Danny Garcia. This is no slight to Jason Rosario. But I just think skills pay the bills. Jermell Charlo's discipline in his approach. Errol Spence's discipline in his approach. They're technically sound. And they have skill set. They both have power. Jermell Charlo has a lot of power. Jermell Charlo on the inside, I believe, is going to break Jason Rosario down. He will not be pushed back. He will not be forced back. He has a strong mentality. And Jermell Charlo, I'm expecting to break Jason Rosario down and stop Jason Rosario by the 8th round of their fight. I could be wrong about the stoppage, but I highly expect Jermell Charlo to be victorious in that fight. And when it comes to Errol Spence, I highly expect Errol Spence to be victorious against Danny Garcia. And this is no slight against Danny Garcia or Jason Rosario. They're great opponents. I just think that they are in the ring with greater opponents that have a higher skill set. And so you have to keep in mind that with these level of fights for a trainer like Derrick James that are running, concurrent to one another, that, it's only right that he makes sure that Errol Spence is 100% on the up and up and paying every close attention to detail when it comes to Errol Spence as far as sparring. So, and physically, they said that he wasn't going to be able to spar until September, and that's right on schedule. But Errol Spence has a point to prove. He has a chip on his shoulder. And I'm almost certain that Errol Spence understands his body. He understands his limitations. He understands his ceiling. And I believe we haven't seen the best of Errol Spence. I believe we're going to see the best of Errol Spence November 21st. I think you're going to see the best of Jermell Charlo September 26th. I don't believe you saw the best of. I think those fights with Tony Harrison with Jermell Charlo is only made him better. And that's for another video. I'll break that down when we talk about Jermell Charlo and Jason Rosario. But this is Errol Spence, and I think that, like Derrick James said, we don't spar in training camp. We don't bring in sparring partners. We simulate fights. So he says that Errol Spencer will be 1,000% ready for Danny Garcia. He says we don't bring in sparring partners. We simulate fights. And it shows in the ring. Because Errol Spencer's never rattled. Jermell Charlo's never rattled. And Derrick James said, I have a relationship with Jermell Charlo and Errol Spence. It's not a trainer, a fighter relationship. It's a intimate relationship, right? So he says that, he looks at them essentially like his sons. So it's not that he looks at them like, products or a job. So he says that that's why he don't have too many fighters in his stable. So he could pay close attention to detail when it comes to Errol Spence. And he'll have 2 unified champions by December. That speaks volumes. Errol Spence will hold the WBC and IBF because I believe he'll get past Danny Garcia. And Jermell Charlo will hold the WBC, the IBF, and the WBA titles. And the Ring Magazine title, I believe, is on the line as well. So that's a great accomplishment. And I trust in Derrick James, straightforward guy. So when he says that Errol Spence is on the up and up, and I trust Errol Spence that says that his body is going to react and he's out to prove everybody wrong. As Derrick James said, he wouldn't be out here running if he wasn't physically healthy. He wouldn't be hitting the pads if he wasn't physically healthy. He wouldn't be hitting the heavy bag if he wasn't physically healthy. So he believes that he will be physically healthy, 1,000% ready for Danny Garcia, and mentally, he's on a whole nother level. And that speaks volumes, not to mention he has a chip on his shoulder and he's motivated to prove all the doubters wrong. So I can't wait to November 21st, and I can't wait to September 26th. But that's all I got for y'all, man. Another thing is, we know Jermell Charlo also spars with Errol Spence, right? So let's say it's an early night and Jermell Charlo comes out unscathed, hopefully no injuries and things of that nature. Maybe it's an early night and he's back sparring and training, helping Errol Spence prepare for Danny Garcia. Like Derrick James said, we don't spar, we simulate fights. That speaks volumes. That's massive. But that's all I got for y'all, man. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed? Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.